Hi there, and welcome to Steps Together, the Steps for Development podcast, where we come together to learn and build our own skills so that we can help the children in our lives to thrive and succeed. I'm your host, Deb Johnson, and I'm so glad you're here. No matter what your role is in a child's life, you're in the right place to learn about child development and kids who are differently wired. Here, you'll learn about the why behind behaviors, practical strategies that really make a difference, and how to advocate for and support all children as you become empowered with tools and skills that bring lasting change. In today's conversation, I want to talk about all those times that things went south. I think if you are ever having to support a child who is differently wired, you've had these instances. You have felt like you did everything you needed to do. You prepared the child, you prepared yourself, you thought of everything, and you get into a situation and it all still goes south. Maybe it's the child going to somebody else's birthday party and you thought you prepped them that it's not their party, but they get there and it's a huge tantrum. They want the presents and they get overwhelmed and melt down and all kinds of things happen and you have to leave the party early. Or maybe you worked really hard, even though you're exhausted after work, to keep the bedtime routine exactly the same as it is every night, but your child still had an outburst and didn't fall asleep until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. Or maybe it's that you were dreading having to take your child to the dentist and you spent days ahead of time prepping your child and getting them ready for this visit to the dentist or the doctor. And the day of the appointment, they refuse to get in the car. And you're just like, I don't know, I don't get it. I thought I did it all right. Well, I'm going to tell you that is a common theme and it's just going to happen, right? It's just a reality. No matter how much we plan ahead, no matter how often we practice and do things, there's only so much that we can control. So there's going to be times where the situation just goes south, as I say. And what I want to talk about today is, what do we do with that? How do we get a little R&R in so that we can reflect and repair what went wrong so that it doesn't happen again the next time? So we're going to talk about this R&R review, reflect and repair, so that you can get past some of those really nasty times, learn from the experience, and see more success in the future. A lot of times, parents don't even want to talk about these situations. They might come into a session and say, it was really terrible. And I don't even want to talk about it. I don't want to go back over it. I've rehashed it a million times in my head. I have no clue what went wrong. And I feel really guilty. I feel, I'm sure everybody was judging me. I came across as a terrible parent, and on and on and on. I'm going to tell you that this rehashing, this reflect and repair process is really, really important for these times because reflection is the key to our own growth and learning. So going back over this is going to support our own growth even more than it is the child's. And our growth, our learning as the adult is what I'm really focused on right now and what you need to focus on so that you can help the child in your life. When we do this review, we don't review with blaming or judgment. We review with curiosity. We come at this R&R review process with an open mind and intense curiosity to try to discern, to figure out what went wrong, what was in our control, what wasn't in our control. How do we let go of it? How do we stop ruminating over it? How do we move on and do better next time? This process helps us to brainstorm new ideas. It builds our toolbox. It's so very vital to finding those new tools, new strategies, new things that we need to be aware of for the next time. The repair piece, right? The forgiveness, the acknowledging that I'm only human, my child is only human, things happen. That repair is crucial for the relationship, the connection, and our capacity for future success. And then doing this review supports us in being proactive for how we teach the skills in the future. We don't want to be punishing about the fact that it went south. We don't want to be disciplining that the child did something wrong. We want to take responsibility as the adult that it's our job to figure out what went wrong and then to repair it, to come up with a better solution. So let's go over these steps. And as I'm talking here, if you notice a little hoarseness in my voice or some pauses where I'm sipping some water, I apologize. I've been a little under the weather and I wanted to get this podcast out. So just imagine we're having a nice, direct one-on-one conversation. Yeah, so sorry for any of that. All right, let's talk about the 3 steps in this reflect and repair process. So the first step is to review the sequence of events, revisit what actually happened, go through whether that is writing it down, talking it out, mentally replaying it in your head, but identify what were the steps, just the sequence, right? What did you do when? Think about some of the steps you might have missed. See if you can fill in some blanks. Oh, I wasn't even remembering that this happened in between, right? Maybe, for example, on the way to the birthday party, you forgot that in the car, your child had already started to become dysregulated because the iPad that usually entertains them in the car wasn't charged. So you forgot that he was already dysregulated heading into the party. And then I want you to think about what strategies you implemented. What tools did you use at each step? What did work? What seemed to be really effective? What do you think maybe wasn't as effective? And then why might something not have worked? Was it that you tried to use a script, but maybe only used it once and you didn't review it again before walking into the house? Was it that you didn't notice that the child was dysregulated, right? Like maybe again about the iPad in the car that you remembered, but as now that you're thinking about it, as you were walking into the house, you didn't really connect and help to co-regulate with the child prior to going into the party. So sometimes it's just little things like that that we can pick up on. The next thing I want you to do is to dig into each of those steps. So we're going to explore what might have influenced going into that, what might have happened, what might have been there before. Let's take the bedtime routine. Maybe you were, I don't know, on the second floor of your house and you were doing everything correctly and according to the sequence that has always worked for your child, but you didn't realize that downstairs something was going on, maybe with other family members or a family pet or anything like that, where the child got dysregulated or upset, and you just didn't even have an awareness of that. What kinds of things might have been affecting emotional regulation that were outside of your control? Were there adults that were stressed? What was your own stress level? What else was going on in the immediate environment? Think about outside factors. Sometimes things that happened a long time ago. So sometimes a bedtime routine goes south simply because you're doing that bedtime routine. It's happening at the typical bedtime, right? Maybe, 8 o'clock is normal bedtime, but you forgot that the night before your child didn't sleep well and they were up very early that morning. And that maybe the reason that routine went south is simply because you should have backed up the bedtime to 7 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock. Maybe your child is hangry, right? They're just hungry and they need a little bit of carbohydrates for their brain. Um, Maybe they've been sick, or maybe they're on the verge of getting sick. Many of our neurodiverse children will start showing some behavioral changes 1 or 2 or even 3 days before they break a fever or start to show signs of being ill. Maybe there were changes during the school day for your child. Maybe the child had a substitute teacher that day, and that contributed to the overall dysregulation, which fed into the particular situation that you feel went really bad. So then the next step in this reflect and repair process is to start the repair piece. Generate alternatives for next time. So maybe it's new structure where, as you get ready for the bedtime routine, you pause and you reflect. What's my child's day been like? What's my self-regulation going into this? Right? There's a little bit, maybe more preparation where you want to remember and think of that. Maybe you want to create a different plan, something that is, instead of a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of a step sequence, maybe it looks more like a flow chart where it's an if-then kind of a sequence, right? Like computer commands. So if my child is hungry, we'll do a bedtime snack. If they're not hungry, we'll go straight to reading a book. Bedtime snacks maybe aren't part of the routine. Or maybe we need to add the bedtime snack as part of the routine, because when you do this R&R review, you realize that it's been happening more and more. And maybe it is because your child is feeling hangry right before bed. And then you want to also consider, as you're revising your plan, what do you want to do in terms of including others, getting support, right? We want to get some support from others when necessary. So don't be afraid to do things like maybe start, let's say, for example, you had really no awareness until the next day that your child had a substitute teacher. Well, maybe you want a little bit more regular communication from the school so that you can prepare better for when your child comes home from school, because what goes on at school absolutely can impact what goes on at home. Um, all right, so what does this look like when we put a review in action? So you're first going to review the sequence of events. Let's take my example of the child heading to the birthday party. So you might start by saying, all right, well, we packed everybody up, we got in the car, we went to the party. My kids saw the presents that were piled up on the table, and they just ran to the presents and opened them up. My sister-in-law tried to intervene, and she grabbed my child by their arm, and my kid turned around and kicked Aunt Susie, and from there on, it was just hopeless. Now you can start to get curious, right? And you can start to think, well, what was my child thinking when Aunt Susie grabbed them by the arm? That would be one of my first questions. That, oh, well, that was challenging because your child was super excited, saw the presents, and all of a sudden here's Aunt Susie, not sure what their relationship is with that aunt, but all of a sudden they're being physically grabbed and pulled away from the presents. That's a step we need to get curious about. We want to ask, when they arrived, were they aware of the expectations, and was there sufficient structure to help them stay regulated when they got the visual input of the presents on the table? Was the environment overwhelming and distracting? Did you walk into a room filled with auditory and visual input, not only the presents sitting there very enticingly, but just all the noise and the decorations and maybe, music and people talking and maybe cousins, same age peers running at your child. So all kinds of things in terms of like the sensory overload. And then that starts to give you the opportunity to prepare for the alternatives. Oh, yes. Every time we go to my brother's house, I know that it's going to be chaotic. There's going to be a lot of kids, a lot of activity. We need a different way to transition into the house so that my child stays well regulated. Or I need to provide a little bit more structure as we're approaching the presence. I'm going to hold my child's hand. I'm going to be more calming and organized. I'm going to stay more connected, or I'm going to assign someone else to be more connected, right? I don't want to put this all on you who's listening to this. Very often, there's one person who takes the primary responsibility for all of this, but it should be within a team of supports. So maybe it means next time you go to a family party, you talk to that brother, that sister, that in-law. You talk to a grandparent, somebody who can help you to help your child. That's so very important. We do so much better when we work together. There's a reason we have that saying, it takes a village. So don't hesitate to ask for that support. And so maybe you need to just revamp the sequence. Maybe you need to come up with a different strategy for taking breaks during that family party, right? There's just so many endless alternatives, things that you could put into place, plans you can have. I have had families who have purposefully taken two cars to go to a family event so that in the event that the child becomes so very dysregulated, one parent can take that child home while the other parent remains with the rest of the family, the other children, so that everyone isn't disrupted by that. And then the goal is to build to the point where you're all going in one car and it's a successful experience. But sometimes we have to just pull back a little bit and put more structure in place. The key here is that it's this reflect and repair process that allows us to build our skills. It's what allows us to step back with some objectivity, to get curious, get out of our judgmental and blaming mindset. That is not helping us. It's not helping anybody, especially your child. If you are stuck in replaying and ruminating over it and kicking yourself and blaming yourself or blaming others, right? None of that helps. What helps is to reflect, look back with curiosity, ask yourself hard questions, and really dig in to see what might have been going on and what can I do better. So that's then taking you to the repair step of being able to plan and prepare for the next time. Building your toolkit, adding in strategies, brainstorming with others to come up with ideas. What could work better next time, right? Do the best you can with what you've got And when you know better, do better. That's the core of reflect and repair. And I'm going to tell you that small, thoughtful reflection turns hard moments into learning opportunities, opportunities for your growth so that your child can grow. And every time you take some time to do this R&R, every time you just take 10 minutes to think about curiously what went wrong, how could I do better next time? That is going to strengthen your relationship with your child, strengthen that connection, build your insight, your own self awareness, and more importantly, give you confidence that you can tackle the next challenge. So, again, reflect and repair, right? 3 steps. Go over each step in the situation. Be curious about what went wrong and brainstorm what you could do better next time. Every hard moment that we have can be an opportunity for learning, for doing better the next time. So please take a moment in the coming days to do some R&R for your own challenging moments. I know something's going to pop up that's going to be difficult. Take some time and see if you can find a way to improve it next time. I hope that this has been helpful. I hope that you're going to give it a try. And I would love to connect and support you through this R&R process. If you're at all interested in getting some more one-on-one support, please reach out to me. You can contact me directly via email, Deborah@stepsfordevelopment.com. You can comment on social media, comment on this podcast, reach out to me, sign up for my newsletter. There's links on Instagram and Facebook to sign up for my newsletter if you haven't already. And let me know how I can help you. By all means, let me know if you're having some success by listening here and learning and growing. And let me know what your challenges are so that I can offer some information in the future, some guidance through these podcasts that would help you and others who are going through similar challenges. I know that together we can make a difference and we can help our kids to thrive and succeed. So thanks so much for joining me today. Bye for now.